Oh, look at this guy. Look at this. What's up, man? What's up, champ?
How are you?
Wait a second. Wait, I got you muted. Hang on.
Hey, champ.
Hey, champ.
Hey, champ.
What's up, dude?
Not much. How are you?
Good. So this is the champ Angerworm. Took it all. Do you have the painting anywhere handy? The champion's prize?
I'd have to pull it out.
All right, I won't make you grab it out of storage. Hey.
If you give me a minute, I'll do it.
Can you look for my AirPods where the car keys are?
Be right back.
Downstairs. And the final player. All right.
Then we'll help you. Oh, you one.
And you got the aquanuts in the background. Oh, man. There it is. Oh, wait.
There you go.
All right, man. Hang on. Wait, that one he saved for somebody. I leaked it. All right. Let me wait, hang on. Let me do a switcheroo. All right, there it is, guys. The Mix Ignis. The champ in his crown. The crown that wasn't meant to be. So Angerworm is fresh. Wow, that looks amazing, man. I'm telling you, Erik needed to send that to me. I was waiting. I was like, come on, man. You know, it's my favorite painting. What?
Look at those details.
Yeah. That is their hallmark. Incredible detail. I'm going to have to stop by and check that out. It looks amazing. You got pretty good lighting there, too. It really glows.
It blew me away when I saw it. I actually,
yeah, it's unbelievable.
This I thought was maybe my third favorite. I still think I like Air a little bit more, but I'm moving this up to number 2. But I mean, they're all gorgeous. So what am I really talking about? Amazing. One more look. Say goodbye.
Incredible. It's always been
now,
my number one.
What do you think? Should I wait 3 years to frame it, or
you probably should? Yeah. Let it marinate a little bit.
All right.
Don't rush to any conclusions.
Let me put it away before something stupid happens.
Okay. Let me remove this and then do that. So, dude, let's talk about GenCon. How was the turnout? What was the vibe like? Were a lot of people seeing the cards? Like, so Erik's and what? All right. So the marketing strategy from day one, in my estimation, based on comments from Erik, is that people were going to see these cards out in the wild at LGSs, at GenCon, all these different places, and then it would just sell itself. They'll go nuts for the art. They'll be like, hey, what's going on there? Let me check out this game. Then they'd see people playing the game, and then they'd be sold on the gameplay. So was GenCon accomplishing that? Were new people that weren't showing up specifically for Sorcery seeing you guys in action and asking questions?
I would say that there were definitely some people who came by and took notice. The GenCon is very location dependent, and there's a ton of foot traffic, but a lot of people are going down major lanes to see certain things or to access certain events. Mm-hmm. So where it was located was good in some ways and not ideal in others, because it was right next to the main concession in the gaming hall. So there was a lot of foot traffic just because that's where you could buy food and water and soda and whatever else. So in that sense, I think some people passed by that wouldn't have otherwise. There are more optimal locations right next to the major walking paths. But I definitely noticed some people came by and were like checking it out. They're like, oh, I'm just looking. And, you know, people were readily available to answer questions. It definitely caught people's eye. And more importantly, the people that had never played before and had just heard about it and got the demos really seemed keen on it. I had only one person that I spoke to that said he didn't like it.
Nice.
All weekend. And all the demos were full. Most of them were given to people who hadn't played before. Whenever there were absentees, those slots filled up. So it wasn't like people went without, like there were empty tables. There weren't. The main event was, I think, 28 which you're always going to get drops for. And there were people that were looking to fill in. I know at least one person like couldn't manage it last minute because he wasn't comfortable making a deck list at the last minute, and it's a little more formal. So I think it may have scared a couple of people away, but that's just constructed. And yeah, I thought it was, the vibes were amazing and the event was really well run. My perspective on this one was that it was almost like a preview, not like a debut, because there's no retail product. So you know, it was for the lucky people who knew enough to check it out. And yeah, it was really good. It was really good. And you know, there were at certain points there were people looking for demos that couldn't get in because the slots were filled. But like I had brought my pre-con decks, I was able to demo people outside of the formal event, like just tell people to pull up. They didn't get any product, but they got to play the game and see how it felt. And I know I lent my pre-cons to a buddy of mine. He taught somebody else, so it was great. Cheers to GenCon.
So the people that would you say that like mostly the people that showed up are kind of like the early adopters that have been active in Discord that we know from the community, or is it a mixed bag?
There were a lot of people who did not have any product. For the constructed event, I would say it was more people with product. But for the learn to plays, a lot of people were just getting their first cards, checking out the cards, learning for the first time. So it was a lot of new players that were very excited and were discovering the game in person.
Nice. So you said like everyone except one guy was liking the gameplay. What were the backgrounds of like people coming to play? Where were they from? Magic or Fab or
there were definitely some Fab players. I mean, I obviously didn't do any kind of like, most of the conversation I had, unless I was directly demoing somebody, was just peripheral, and it was more about being available for rules questions. Like, how does this work? How does this work? And we were kind of hovering around, right? So like, two people would walk up to the learn to play, sit across from each other. If they had absolutely no knowledge, they would get much more of an instructional on like how to open the game and how to get the ball rolling. But if they had a little bit of know-how, then we kind of like let them just hover until they had questions for us, so that they kind of had the organic experience. I know there were a lot of card game players there, because most people have played Magic that I spoke to. And there were definitely board game. I know at least one or two people like were checking it out because it looked more like a board game. But I think most people had played Magic. Some were from Flesh and Blood.
Okay. How'd you figure out how to turn that light on? He's blinded me with my...
You're giving me shit. My daughter's in bed. You got a maniac running around turning lights on, shooting laser beams.
It's hard to control.
Yeah.
All right. What is this guy?
I'm learning that.
We got a question on the peanut gallery. I'm curious how many alpha boxes were sold, opened, and what the polls were. There was zero coverage. But so were people opening boxes at the event, or was it more about playing the game?
So there were draft pods. There were 4 pods of 8 people, each with 3 packs. So that's 24 packs per pod. So that's several boxes. And on top of that, it was about a box per pod, because on top of that, you got a pack for every win in your draft. And then I think the winner got 2 extra packs. Plus he got the crown promo and the box stopper. So
nice.
there were 3 drafts, because I played in 3 drafts. 3 drafts with that, so there were 12 boxes there. Plus there was prize support on top of that. They were very generous with the constructed event too. Everybody wound up with at least a pack, and if you had won the majority of your games, you got more. So they were slinging alpha. You could get a lot of alpha product. I came home. Cool. I had like the better part of a box worth of sealed packs, on top of the 3 packs I got for every draft. So yeah, there was a lot of product.
said that you.
They were very generous, I think. If you did the learn to play, you got one of the pre-con decks, and you got a pack also.
Mommy.
As for polls, my buddy got I know my buddy got a Philosopher's Stone. Listen, man, this is one of the
non-foil
weekends. Non-foil.
Okay.
So the staff did a draft on Thursday night. So the volunteers, they hooked us up with a free draft. Everybody was so burnt out and tired, but we still drafted anyway. And I pulled a foil Death Dealer. And then I know at the Team Covenant thing, there were a lot of packs flowing too, because they gave us enough for I believe it was sealed. So that's
so we're rewinding back. The first night you got there, was it a planned thing that Team Covenant was going to host Jeff and Drew Tucker, or was that just kind of like an impromptu thing?
I mean, it was definitely a planned thing, but I don't know how far in advance it was planned, because they only mentioned it I think it was like a week before or so. So
okay.
It wasn't that much notice. Maybe it was a little more than that, but I knew that I wasn't sure I was going to be there in time, because we kind of do it in a crazy fashion. Like my buddy who's in Albany drives down, picks up my friends from Brooklyn. They come down, pick us up in Maryland, and then we go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a 18-hour drive for them, but for us it's 9.
Damn. So what was it like in the Discord the week before? Team Covenant hey, we're going to host a dinner. Everyone's invited.
Yeah, something was said in the Discord, and then it was like, oh wow, and then
that's awesome.
Yeah. Drew and
Jeff.
Did
they say that Jeff and Drew were involved, or they pulled in at the last second there?
I believe that was mentioned ahead of time, but or something hinting about that. I can't remember the details. A lot has happened since then.
So was it your first time meeting them? The artists?
Yeah, I had never met them before.
Mm-hmm.
They're super nice. I had spoken to Drew previously.
Okay.
And I think Jeff answered one Discord comment I made once or something, but that doesn't count. But Drew and I were talking.
You there the day in my Discord, the Collector Arthouse Discord? Jeff just kind of emerged out of nowhere. We were talking about the valuation of art, and he was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "I had a bunch of paintings in the early '90s that I sold for, $100." And I was like, "Oh man, everyone's got a story like that. Which ones did you lose?" And he's like, "Well, I'm Jeff Menges." And he was like, "I sold them all." And I was like, "Oh shit! I had no idea he was in the Discord."
Yeah, they're really cool guys, and they have this vibe, been there, done that vibe, and like Drew Tucker. I mean, that guy is super chill. I want to drink his blood to calm down. He's very mellow, super relaxed, really nice to talk to. Because I went and I got some cards signed by their booths. I had no time till the very last day, because we did the dinner on Wednesday. Thursday I did learn to plays, and I just wanted to be at the thing all day so I could front load my contribution. I drank a little heavily Wednesday, so it was a hard road on Thursday, but it was good, and it really seeing people play and getting to help them out actually gave me a lot of energy. Thursday was an all day thing, and then Friday was an all day thing too, because I did the learn to plays in the morning, and then I did the draft in the afternoon, and I didn't want to go nuts because I knew the constructed was on Saturday. So but GenCon does this kind of silly thing where the vendor hall where all the artists are opens at 10 and closes at 6. So if you're doing events, especially all day events, you have no time to go to the vendor hall. Mm-hmm. So you have to schedule a gap.
Did you you learn mostly by playing on Tabletop Simulator, and or were you just, was it pretty competitive, or were you beating up on noobs at the event?
It was a mix for me.
Okay.
My first game was against Ira, who's the game developer.
Yep.
And definitely one of the best players.
I'm sure he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's really good. And that was we looked at each other and we're like, right out of the gate. All right, cool. So I was lucky to win that one.
Yeah, you know what's wild about him though? I remember the day we were all. I think were you there in the early days of the Discord, the official Discord, in like September of 2021? I guess it was roughly October.
Not the very no. Came
Okay.
around when the
Yeah,
Kickstarter
I
started.
think like Simon was there first. You know, I joined a week or two after him, and then like all of a sudden, I want to say like in the latter part of the winter or early part of the next year, like Ira just showed up out of the blue, and I
Yeah.
still remember this because I ended up hiring him. You know, he became significant, but he
Right.
was just like a guy that just showed up one day in Discord, and he was like, "Hey, what's this game?" He started asking a million questions, and then next thing I know, like a couple months later, he's an employee, and he's
Like
like
a
one of the
game-
key developers. So
A
it's pretty
game
wild.
development angel. was
Yeah.
his name to
So I
help
don't
the
know what
game
his
out.
background is, but like
He's a
I
super.
remember like when he was just an average guy in Discord, just showed
Yeah.
up and had no idea what the game was, how to play it, and now he's like designing it. Pretty
And
unreal.
he's a really smart, clever guy.
Yeah.
So they're lucky to have him.
That's cool.
And yeah, and I was unlucky to play him, but
So
I
he
pulled
beat
it
you?
off.
Or
Huh?
was it single elimination? Did
It
he
was-
beat you?
He did not. I won all my games.
Okay.
But it was such that if you dropped a game, you couldn't win
Okay.
because somebody was going to wind up being 5-0. So
Yeah.
yeah, it worked out where I played the eliminator versus the other 4-0, and that was that.
Nice.
So I played him. I played Mean Mugging Mike.
Yep.
Who's an experienced player. I played one guy who basically he wasn't brand new, but he had to kind of scrape together a deck. So that wasn't that was probably the match where it was the most. I came in with the most advantage, and I played another Death Speaker player who actually beat one of my good friends, who's a very good card game player. I think he got, like, you always need a little luck, but he was a competent player. He was 3-0 when I was 3-0. And like I just that game I was very lucky. Everything just lined up perfectly.
Yeah.
I played a Grandmaster on a, you don't know what I'm talking about, but I played, the Geistwood. Remember the guys, like the
Yeah.
from the art, right? So the
Yeah.
Grandmaster lets you draw 3. Geistwood, if you die on the Geistwood, you get your Genesis ability, which lets you draw 3. So I played the Grandmaster on the Geistwood. He stuck, which meant he went back to my turn. I then played Pact with the Devil on him, which killed him, which let me draw 3 more and 3 more. Which is like, I was like, okay, well, if I lose with 9 cards, plus I can play them out of the graveyard now, I am very bad at this. But I didn't even need all that. Like, things were just going really well that game.
Yeah, so every game has some aspect of RNG and luck, like you said.
100%.
Like where on the spectrum would you say sorcery falls? Because you hear sometimes these anecdotes where you have these big splash cards that can really tilt a game or really change the trajectory of a game, like on a dime, right? Is that like common though, or is that like the odd end, rare opportunity that you draw your one unique out of your deck?
So so sorcery does a couple of amazing things from card game design. The resources, because the resources are in a separate deck, and because you're always drawing 3 and you're drawing 3 spells, you're always guaranteed to have a seeding of the resources you need. On top of that, the mulligan system is really, like, most people don't talk about this. The mulligan system is really brilliant because if you get a card, like one card that you really want, but the rest of your hand is useless, you can just discard the useless part and keep that key card. And that's a big deal. Because in Magic, you draw a hand, you may love your cards and have no mana, you got to dump the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference. Like, if you're looking for one card, you can dump the 3 that you don't want and go draw 3 fresh. So that's really nice. I think that's a really great part of it. And then lastly, the more obvious thing is that every turn you get to choose what you draw. So when you need a land, you can get a land.
Yeah.
So those are all mitigators of RNG, like the feels bad RNG. Now, what you put in your deck, sometimes you draw the wrong card at the wrong time, and that's just card games. The other thing is, the other randomness is, it's like sometimes you draw a card a turn too late and it would have made all the difference, or you you need a certain thing in a matchup that you didn't see a lot of that. You saw a lot of the thing that doesn't work as well. But that's just card games. That's not unique to Sorcery.
Yep.
The thing about it is, I would say my games, especially my game versus Ira and my game versus Zalem, came down to a couple of small decisions that I think either like a mistake was made or a good choice was made, and those were the margins by which the game was won or lost. Because especially like my last game, we both wound up on death's door. My game with Ira, I put him on death's door probably the turn before he would have done it to me. I believe that might actually have been exactly how it played out. So we're talking like being one turn away from losing. Whoever goes on death's door first is probably going to be the one to lose. And in my game versus Zalem, Adam, I wasn't like, I was very confident because I had 11 life and he had 0. He was on death's door, and then he made a play and he took me to death's door. I needed to beat him that current turn because he had all the cards he needed to win the next turn. So I had to like slow down and be like, wait, how am I going to do this and get out of this? And if I had the wrong cards, I would have lost that game. So narrow margins.
Nice.
But here's the other point. With these kinds of games, like I come from miniature wargaming. There is a variable amount of random luck involved. But no matter what, the player has to know how to navigate that. The same way a poker player has extreme range of hands that they play. You know, it's narrowed by multiple plays over time, but the outcomes are highly varied, and yet skilled players should win more often than not. And I think that's very true of Sorcery. And it doesn't have like poker level randomization, but a lot of people like to say, oh, the game's too random, it's no skill. Randomization and skill are not connected. They're only connected in the sense that maybe the margins of victory and defeat narrow, but the good players are still going to ride those margins at the peak, and the bad players will still be down here, right? Even if you narrow the margins, skill players, it becomes all the more important that you get to this level, right? And make no mistakes.
So can you architect a deck that plays pretty similarly, you know, game to game, or are there cards that are so splashy either in your own deck archetype or the one you're playing against that every game is like wildly different and there's a pretty heavy element of chance, I guess?
So a lot of the power cards are ordinaries or exceptional. So you do tend to see, like, the most powerful card I would say in my deck going into the event was Thunderstorm, which is an exceptional. And I saw it. I didn't see it every game, but I saw it most games, which is exactly what I wanted it. You know, that's why I took 3. But
3 copies.
There are very powerful cards like the Philosopher's Stone. It's great when you see it and you need it or you want that opener. Most often you're not going to see it. So it does change the game, and it like puts you a turn ahead on casting spells. It really varies card to card whether it breaks the game open for you or not. But you cannot, as a player trying to win, you cannot depend on your uniques, because you might not see them. You might not see them the whole tournament.
Well, so the cards with the library and search mechanics and or card draw, do those really work well to accelerate your discovery of uniques, or is it still highly variable and people don't really archetype decks around their uniques to really drive their deck?
You can't. I don't think we're at a point where you can build around a unique. The tutors are narrow or unreliable. Browse is the big one because it lets you dig for 7. Dream Quest, your opponent gets a say, right? Like if they do a damage to you, you wake up and you don't get to do the Dream Quest. Other digs are for 3 or 1. The best tutor is Common Sense, which is an ordinary that lets you dig for ordinaries, which is great. I mean, like Grapple Shot is an ordinary, and that's maybe one of the best cards in the game. So now you have a tutor for it. So you basically doubled your number of grapple shots. But yes, like digging for a unique is not reliably present at this time. The only exception is Highland Princess can go let you fetch one of the cores or the stone. which is kind of cool. She could let you fetch like Kythera also, if that's kind of what your deck is built around. So that's like a second copy, right? Because she lets you go do that. So she was cool in the Death Speaker, because not only does she let me fetch one, but if she dies and I recur her, I then get to fetch a second one, which is great ramp. The game I saw her though, Ira used it against me, and he used it to ramp, so it wasn't the best.
Yeah, I was just showcasing Vincent Pompetti Artist Proofs before he came on. I don't know if you caught any of that, so I'm looking at the.
I just caught the 3 laid out.
Okay, yeah, the Highland Princess. Search your spell Genesis. Search your spell book for an artifact that costs 1 or less. Reveal it and put it into your hand. Shuffle.
Yeah.
So it's a minion with fairly low casting cost. It's a unique though, right? So to your point,
she's unique.
You know, to even draw that tutor mechanic and then parlay it into another one you need, it's low probability.
Yeah, so I look at her as a second copy of the Stone or Cores. That's how I've been using her so far.
Okay.
I'm sure there will, like, she's like a timeless classic, right? The more relics that come out at one cost, the better she'll be.
And you and I almost bought that painting, right? We both passed.
Yeah, that one was
that and the Champion. You know, my 2 regrets from Vincent.
That one especially, because it's like it's an undeniably beautiful painting. The colors are fantastic. I really like the painting. I just kind of was thinking to myself, what am I going to just hang a princess on the wall?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what?
As
much
redhead,
as I love
like,
all the paintings, I bought several, but I'll only buy one that is like independently displayable outside of the dependency on the game. You know, like there's some that like are really cool looking and flavorful, but they're just like too freaky fantasy that, like, you know, I'm not really gonna.
Don't say.
If sorcery fails, you know, it's pretty suspect to hang a painting like that, right?
Yeah.
Like I like one. That's why I like Modesty and I don't know, the Severn one. I got Predestination, which is now Kythera Mechanism. The ones that are like aesthetically independent and beautiful on their own, those are the ones I really targeted.
Yeah,
but Highland Princess was in that category. I was like, well, but again, you're right. Like, is the wife going to let me hang a beautiful woman on the wall?
Yeah, and she's like a redhead. It's kind of like, what are you trying to say?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But
so that one I passed on. Homeganger, I feel like I could get away with. Like, I'm into those ones that are more like war oriented. You know, I got the Gilded Aegis. Was kind of cool. It's like I wanted a Seagrave, you know, and that was pretty cool. Like the intricacy of the shield. I like that old school classic type vibe too. So I got a nice
Kite Archer is amazing.
Kite Archer?
Yeah, that's a beautiful painting. Like, it's a beautiful painting of an archer. So when I was started buying art, I was a little like clueless, I would say. So I didn't quite wrap my head around how much I was willing to spend on art, and so I missed the window on some stuff. But I feel like every piece I have, I feel super privileged to have, and like that culminating with the mix is, I mean, that's like a dream come true, especially since I've gotten more into surrounding myself with sorcery art, so the home run.
Yeah, you know what? I own several of Elvira's sketches, so I think I have the sketch for the mixed Ignis.
Oh, really?
So we're related and divided in a way. we'll both feel incomplete unless we have the other.
You're the Danny DeVito, though.
Yeah, I know. You're the real deal. You're Arnold. Twins. All right. So let's see if people have questions here. Yes, people are validating grapple. I know grapple shot's a big deal in the game. Philip Joe is really chasing some art pieces. He was late to the game. So the people that are more late to sorcery, the valuations, of course, have gone up significantly. And more reflect fair value, in my opinion. But early on, they were underpriced and mispriced. I think there's a lot of like artists that have never done the TCG before and really didn't know how to value it and price it. And now it's evolved significantly, and they're harder to find. You know, they're sold. It's already changed hand one, so people that own them are all asking like $5,000 plus, you know, on a resale. It's tough.
It's an impossible thing to say what the right price is. Like, I think some of the artists were very fairly priced for, like, they knew what they wanted to earn off of the painting, but they're not familiar with the nerd frenzy that can go on with CCGs, and they weren't pricing that into it. And and that's fine because it's a brand new CCG. So like, I think on one end you have people pricing in things like Magic level, like some of the art pieces are selling for Magic art level prices, but Magic has 30 years of history and is a $1 billion industry. Now, I love Sorcery and I see its potential. So you have to factor that in, and you have to factor the optimism of like, I'm here on the ground floor. These are pieces of alpha art. What will it be worth? I don't know. So like, I've spent a lot and I've spent a little, and as long as I'm happy with the piece, I feel like okay with it, right?
Yeah, I think you hit on the
like
you also hit on the counterpoint to your own argument though, because Magic's been around for 30 years. So the other effect is that art is, I don't want to say like diluted or commoditized per se.
No, that's exactly what I was diluted. You're right.
Yeah, so Louis was talking about on his channel the other day how there's like, actually, you know what, it was Post Malone did like a thing with Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
and he was saying that there's like 60,000 Magic cards or something, like insane number, right? So there's like 60,000 paintings out there. Like imagine the choice that those, sure, there's millions of players, but they're not all art collectors. It's like a smaller segment that's into the art. So there's a lot more choice. Whereas in Sorcery, there's less available. 400 seems like a lot, but it's largely sold now, except, you know, you could get pieces from the artist still here and there, but it's a smaller pool. It's optimism and alpha, you know, that's always going to carry a premium. But like the other thing is like the psychology of it from the artist perspective. There were art. So as I mentioned, a lot of the artists had never done TCGs before. I think they came in from their outside art world and exhibition, you know, circuits and whatnot, thinking that like there's no way these gamers are going to spend a lot on some of these pieces. And plus they were like tailored for the purpose of the game. So like a good example is what is the princess that or the queen that Severin did?
Queen of Midland?
Yeah, Queen of Midland and the Silver Valkyries. And I remember when I reached out to her for Predestination, now known as Kythera Mechanism, I purchased that one, and she still had those available, and they were like, I want to say $600 top. They might have been like $500. I'm talking about Queen of Midland and Silver Valkyries. And I really thought hard about Silver Valkyries. I was like, I asked her, I was like, why is that price so low? And she was like, it's just not my best work. You know, I don't like it. It meant nothing to her because she sells like paintings outside of Sorcery for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, you know, for like her larger, more intricate pieces. So she just didn't think anything of it, but you know, she didn't understand the tie that it was alpha and it's tied to TCGs, and there's actually money in TCGs.
I'll say two things about Severin.
Yeah.
One, like she produces some really like unbelievably beautiful art, right? And it just seems to be her default. Two, she seems like a really sweet person, and she just exudes that sweet charisma. So I'm a big fan of hers just off of those two things. No, I totally like. I was going to say the same thing. Like, yes, Magic has diluted the market. That's kind of their problem on many fronts, right? And there is no, you cannot directly compare the two for exactly like what we both said, right? Like this is a budding game, and it's got a lot of people excited for the future. Magic is an established game that has burned a lot of people, but has a lot of hardcore fans, but has expanded beyond anybody's expectations, and nobody has ever experienced anything like that before. And art is peripheral to all of this and its own thing, so it's a very individualized taste-based market. So ultimately, like, it's worth what people will pay, and you know, if the artists are getting more money, I think that's an undeniably good thing. Even though it's sad, like when you miss the boat and you look at art that you're like, fuck, I could have bought.
Yeah, I know. Too many regrets. This early on too is really wild, right? Like the game just came out a couple of months ago, and we're like, shit, we missed on all these paintings.
Yeah,
it's wild.
There are a lot of, somebody was saying there's not a lot of original art. There's a lot of original Magic art. I was actually surprised when I looked into it. A lot of the stuff that looks digital is hand painted.
Yeah,
blew me away.
there's
I was
amazing
like,
Magic
wow.
artists for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Drew does traditional for Magic. You know, he had some at Gen Con, and same ones he had at IAC Card Show, at least a few that didn't sell. But that's great. He got a few sales there. I heard Jeff did pretty well and sold a few at Gen Con. So that's good. You hit a huge audience at Gen Con. So
He sold almost every painting he had for
Jeff or Drew.
I think both of them, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they had much left at all. I think all Drew I saw had left was Mirage, which I love, but
yeah,
it was $6,000 and I could not.
Was it? Yeah. That's a nice one.
He sold every other one that was $5,000 or whatever. So
right. I think a bunch are around 5 for him. Yeah. They're nice, man. I've thought long and hard about a few of his. I've spent so much. I own so many already, so I'm trying to pace myself. And then I'm kind of obsessed with Curios, but that's like a whole nother discussion because after that bronze sale, people are just out of their minds on these Curios. They think everything is like, oh, bronze 11K, then mine's got to be like 5, right? Like, come on, it's not playable.
Even the trash ones. Even the trash ones.
The trash ones, yeah. Of course I love the historical non-playable ones, which are like the riskiest because like in the history of TCGs, the most meta relevant and highly playable cards are the ones that carry the most value. So to have like a card that's extremely rare but purely collectible, is that going to stand the test of time? I mean, that can be debated. So like when you're spending 4 figures on a card like that, you're rolling the dice and it makes me nervous. I don't know.
Well, look, if the truth of it is, I think if Sorcery becomes a massive game that is beloved, and I think it has the aspects that make people fall in love with it because it appeals on multiple fronts. The gameplay is really great. I've really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And I played a lot of games for a long time. But it also has it has like the mystery of the curios, and it also has this appeal because the cards are beautiful. They're no borders. They look magnificent. There's something modern and old school about them. The art is great. It's all hand painted. It's got this boutique feel to it, right? So it's got these different appeals. So if this cauldron bubbles and creates the concoction for future success, I think that everything that's highly collectible will be worth quite a bit. The true audit, like if there are 50 copies of a card from Alpha Edition and this game lasts 10 years, I think that's going to be valuable. But I think there's more concrete value in cards that are alt versions of things you can play, especially super bombs that are like some of the best cards in the game. I think there's more value there, but it's a very, again, this is like curios are kind of like art, right? It's very personal what appeals to you. Obviously the Death Speaker is the best. Because it's got the artist, it's an avatar, it's got the great card. Death Speaker's friggin' awesome. Obviously I'm a fan, and it's a curio, so
yeah, it makes sense that one and the Frazetta. I mean, yeah, the Death Dealer, to your point, like being an avatar. The thing with avatars, so that's a good question. It brings up a good point. One of my worries, if you're going to invest in like, say like you're looking at a painting from an investment perspective, or a card for that matter, like these foil cards that are going for a couple grand for the high end foils, or the avatars, several $100 is a lot to some people too, right? Do you think there's a chance that these alpha avatars can be rendered obsolete in future sets? Like anything is possible, right? What if in Arthurian Legends you introduce you're playing with like Lancelot or King Arthur or whatever, and those are the avatars, and like it doesn't make any sense to play with Death Speaker or something. You know what I mean? They could be completely obsolete, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's no denying that once you make a set of cards, the tendency in all games is to, as you run out of design space, okay, we've already done this. We know what this looks like. What are we going to do for the next iteration? It's kind of similar, but there's power creep, right? It starts to creep forward. Cards get more rules. Cards get more complicated. New interactions are discovered that make other things just objectively worse. So the way Magic solved it was with different formats where you have like like a temporal barrier. We're playing, these sets are of the now, those sets are of legacy. Like, I don't know which way Sorcery is going to go. I think because of the slower set release, there's less danger of that. Like, one of the hidden upsides of a slower set release is that you have more time to balance what you're releasing and to explore the space that is left open and find ways of creating new cards without making old cards obsolete. You also have just more play testing time to make sure that cards work and aren't breaking the game. Because as soon as something breaks the game, then how do you resolve it? Do you ban the thing, or do you create a hard counter, or you just escalate across the board and leave everything in the dust? I think the way the cores are and the Philosopher's Stone, they're not going to mess with those, and they're kind of hard to mess with because they're just straightforward, very good. Things like avatars, I think we're going to see a cycle of avatars probably fall by the wayside, depending on what they are. And that's fine, right? Like, you can, because you can always revive an avatar by creating something that works particularly well with its mechanic. So if the avatars are very different, there might be ways to revitalize them with new cards down the road. I'm not sure. I'm not like a game designer, so.
Well, because the thing is, like, so irrefutably, the philo, the cores, those are fundamental to the resource, the intrinsic resource design of the game. So you would assume that those are always going to be relevant. But like for avatars, like I played games like Hearthstone in recent years, and then like Magic in the early days pre-Commander. Like, I don't even know what Commander is or how that's played, because I played like in the 90s before that shit existed, right? And you would play around a color, and then the colors would have like thematic concepts pretty much, right? If you had like yellow, or like, the black, like minions, or red was more direct damage oriented and things like that, right? So the concept of like architecting a game design around an avatar is a little foreign to me. So that's why I'm wondering, in other games, you say you've played a lot of games, is it normal to phase out avatars, or is it also common, as you say, that they reemerge based on new cards that are introduced, so they always have the potential to be relevant, and the alpha ones in particular always have the potential to remain iconic and relevant?
So the comp I have would be, or the comp that comes to mind for me right away, is actually Netrunner, because you have a runner, or you have a corp card, a corporation card, and that kind of dictates that dictated how you would run your deck. Commander doesn't. I think Elder Dragon Highlander, which is Commander now, was from the 90s. They actually made that when Legends came out, or a little after. So that's been around forever, but obviously they popularized it by making products for it and saying, like, this casual way to play is actually more appealing for most people now than the hardcore way to play, because I think over time people have run out of time, so they don't want formats that you have to dedicate your whole life to. But Netrunner, your runner would kind of dictate how you would construct your deck, and I don't think Sorcery is quite there yet because it's a single set, but as time goes on, I see that becoming more and more a thing. Like, the Death Speaker is absolutely very much that, right? Like Avatar of Earth, Sorcerer, you can play either of those, and you have like a mid-range air earth deck that kind of would look similar. The Death Speaker, you're building around that Genesis ability entirely, so he's already like that. And some abilities are more generic, like Sorcerer is generic, Elementalist is more generic, and that's totally going to depend on the avatar rules. I do think it's inevitable that over time, as you explore new space with avatars, the shittiest avatars get bumped out, but I already think that's a thing now, and that's just the nature of competitive card games. But there's still room, as long as the game is fun, there's still room to have fun with, like, I played Death Speaker to get my hard record in the league, and then I switched to Avatar of Air because it's just so much fun to play for me. And I won more games than I lost, but that wasn't really the important part. It was like trying to make her work was really fun for me. And I think there's a lot of room for that too. And draft avatars have a different purpose in draft too. Like one thing I noticed was I saw an elementalist being passed in draft, and I was like, oh, actually, elementalist is surprisingly good in draft because it suddenly expands your card pool so much, because you can play single element or single threshold cards with no burden, right? So it expands your card pool. You don't have to avoid taking something because it's not in your color, you know? So that's another little dimension. And if draft becomes popular, that might be more of a consideration.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it evolved. I was shocked when so I didn't, of course, when the new beta avatars were introduced, I looked at the art from Francesca. I didn't even bother looking at the game mechanic because I still got to learn the game, right? So, and I remember he was saying that they will be functionally different, and I know that they are. So what is your take on, well, I guess you wouldn't know because, well, no, beta is going to be a reprint. All right, so beta is a reprint, but we have these new functionally different elemental avatars. Are the first 4 elemental avatars that Severn did with their functionality, are those already obsolete and people will play with the new beta avatars, in your opinion?
I don't think obsolescence, we're at that point for anything. I think, and we talked about this last time, I think the Avatar of Fire was a little bit of a miss, but worked for the precons.
Yeah.
But I don't see why, like Avatar of Earth I just played in the finals, and she's a beater. You know, she's badass. I love Avatar of Air. She's super fun. She's like, the way she works and the tricks you can do are just thrilling to me. Just as a player and somebody interested in the tabletop. From like pure goodness perspective, that narrows things a lot, but I don't think that's all important, because there are always going to be more avatars than there are competitive avatars. You know? I think they did a great job at making the sorcerer the baseline avatar, because he's just straight up, card draw is just straight up good. And we're gonna have multiplayer too, right? Like we already know people play tested it and had a ton of fun with it. And everything I've seen of this game, I am very excited to see multiplayer get more formalized, and people are already experimenting with stuff. And I think
that's not excited for beta. You're saying that eventually that's coming, right?
I don't know if it's going to be formally released by the company with beta, but I would imagine it will come within the next 12 months. I'm not sure what's going on with that on any kind of like formal basis. I know it's something we've all seen them express interest in it in Discord, because why wouldn't you, right? Like, it's a whole new avenue to interest people in your game. And I think this game is particularly well suited to it. The one pleasant surprise, it wasn't a surprise, but it was a confirmation I experienced at GenCon, is that this game, I think, drafts as well as Magic the Gathering. And Magic the Gathering, in my opinion, their best format, other than like the fun of Commander, which is very casual, draft has been like the best way to play Magic. And I mean, it's a way that you play Magic where somebody opens a box every time they want to play it. So it sells product too, I would imagine. Sorcery drafts really well and is very fun to draft. So that was a real nice like confirmation for me. I was like, this is working great.
And how many like packs does it take to make a functional deck? How was the packs?
You open, it's the same as Magic. You open 3 packs. So it's pick one, pass one, left, right, left. There's a token card, or like your sorcerer or your land, you just pull out and you just go until the cards run out. And then you open another pack, you go the opposite direction, go and take one until your cards run out. You have access to all the basic lands, sites, and you have access to a sorcerer guaranteed. If you open another, you can use that, another avatar.
What's it on you?
Got company.
Little,
Yeah, so I got to learn the game, man. I'll take you up on your offer one of these days. I'm
Yeah,
interested.
it's an open offer. I'll teach you.
It's
to
just
play.
time. Look, it's this kid's 5 years old and it's 10:20 p.m. and he's no sign of
I
fading.
know they're little villains, right?
Yeah.
It's just a long war.
So we gotta pre-coordinate and cook something up. But
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds pretty interesting. That's an amazing win. Did you go into it thinking you're going to be competitive in the tournament, or is this going to be like a crapshoot? I know you played it quite a bit, right? You played a lot in Simulator?
I have played a lot.
Yeah.
I am not as good a player as the players I beat. I'm not as good as Ira. I'm not as good as Zalem. But I'm good enough where
Zalem? Is he European or is he from Australia? I forget.
Zalem?
Yeah.
Nah, he's from like Colorado or something.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought for some reason he was overseas. He's got an LGS, right?
I believe he has a game store, but I think he sells a lot of video games.
Okay.
And they run a con out there. I plug it for him. I don't remember what it's called. But
yeah,
he's
I remember talking a lot in Discord.
Yeah, he's a very good gamer. So I would say I did not expect to win. I didn't think that was realistic.
Yeah.
But I know that in a format where it's Swiss, you can go 5-0, right? Like if you run hot and you play well, like if you're a good player, you can go 5-0. If it was like best of 3 and we played over 2 days, and I probably would get eliminated at some point. I don't think I have the consistency for that. But
when they pulled out the original painting, did it draw some attention from the people in the room? Or you're saying everyone's doing their own thing at Gen Con, it really didn't draw that or anything?
Listen, Gen Con had, I think, 65,000 people or 80.
Yeah, I know,
it was just the vastness of the hall. It's you're going to get people who look and check out what's going on, especially when people start to gather and get excited and people are clapping and stuff. You definitely get people looking. I don't think anybody was like, oh, a painting, let me.
Right. It's just too big. Yeah.
It's just too big. But I think Gen Con, if they do a major, like a beta release, like a big beta thing there, have a booth, have like something available for pre-sale that people think is worth money. Like that's why the Lorcana stuff happened, because for a lot of people it's worth sleeping overnight if they think they can flip something for $1,000, right? That's really what's driving it. It's not interest. It's not because everybody wants to fight Mickey Mouse versus Cinderella, right? That's not really the driving force behind it. Let's be real. And I'm not knocking the game. I haven't played it. I'm sure it's going to be fun for a lot of kids, but it's just like that's the driving force behind those lines and stuff. It's not like, oh, this is what we've been craving our whole lives, a Disney CCG. So
and there's so many there, right? So it's hard to stand out, I guess. Maybe that's not the best forum for it. There's a lot of people, but it's like disaggregated, it sounds like.
I think though that it could be the forum for it. First of all, it's great because Magic comes from Gen Con.
Okay,
that's where Magic started.
All right.
So historically, for the game that wants to like harken back to Magic, it's perfect that it kicked off at Gen Con, right? So that's just perfect for historical synchronicity or whatever the term is. And I think with more preparation, retail product, some sort of big splash, Gen Con could be whatever Sorcery wants it to be for them, with enough planning. Now it's a small team. They just kickstarted. Like this wasn't the year for it. So I'm just very happy that they made it an event to remember, got coverage from it. If you introduce Sorcery at this Gen Con to just 100 people and they got their friends to play, 200 people playing in front of people at their game store, talking to their families and friends, noting that October's coming, you can buy product, people get interested. There's a cascade effect, and the game has to grow organically. So I think it's a great place to reach a lot of people. There are a lot of people doing the learn to plays. A lot of people got product, at least a little taste of product, and most people really liked it. So I think it's just, they got their first event in, they saw how that went, they saw how drafts went, right? Like just as a collection of guinea pigs, it was probably very informative for them.
Yeah, and it says like so people, early adopters, people that know how to play, and or people that learn for the first time. It demonstrates that there is organized play potential. I think for one thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And then some people say it's like a myth that they weren't ready to like go launch with the booth, but I'm not sure of any game that just shows up in like a big sea of 65,000 people and stands out as a big blockbuster success. I know Magic did that, but it's not like indie TCG games are just emerging out of the woodwork, especially these days when there's like dozens of them popping out like constantly on Kickstarter. So I think you're right. Like next year, there's still that opportunity for the big splash. Once there's more baseline awareness, like my point of perspective is always like the art scene and stuff. So I hear from the artists, like Tony Sudlow is on Facebook here commenting on our stream. It's funny. I think he's watching it through Facebook and not YouTube. But
Tony, I love you, man.
Yeah. He actually said hi to you.
Big fan.
He told me like a month ago that he went to like
Cheers,
5
Tony.
different LGSs in his area, and not one of them even heard of Sorcery. And I was like, did they know who you are? Do they know that you're the Great King, from Magic and other games and PSR? And he was like, they know who I am.
I'm listening.
Like, they have no idea what Sorcery is. So what the hell's going on? And I hear that from like others, like Ed Beard Jr. tells me the same thing. He goes to these Renaissance affairs, all types of oh shit, that's nice.
I know you, Tony.
Yeah, that's his masterpiece. That's awesome. So like Ed like goes to all these Renaissance fairs, and they know like a lot of the fans from Magic show up and have him sign cards, and he has a lot of like fair. Some people don't even know him from Magic; they just know him from his other artwork and stuff like that. But even there, like the Magic people showing up at his booth have never heard of Sorcery. So it seems like it's been around for 2 years to people like me and you, but it's like really, really early days. So I think beta will be that next push, but like I really think there's going to be a shortage of beta, and it's not going to be like fully the big player splash that some people expect. I think there's going to be an issue in Europe because it seemed like they didn't have a lot of time to put pre-orders in, and there wasn't like really any marketing going on in Europe. So I think like a lot of LGSs in Europe have no idea what Sorcery is, and that was evident in the Kickstarter too. And there hasn't been like a push to market to that market from the team. And then in the U.S., I think a lot more stores have heard of it, but still on a small scale. So really, I think there will be a need for a revised, and that will be the big mainstream push and not so much beta. It'll still feel like early days for the next 6 to 12 plus months,
Well, so I think that the nice part about beta is because it's a retail product. If the company wanted to tuck away 5,000 boxes and ship them to GenCon and do a launch there, you're not allowed to be mad at them, right? It's their stuff for retail. This year, like they couldn't do that because it's a Kickstarter product and it was printed to order, right? Yeah. So if they showed up with their overprinting and sold it, like that wasn't viable. That was never part of the advertising. They have to do what they say they're going to do to a large degree. So I hope that maybe they'll have some products set aside for big splash event like GenCon. I don't know the cost and like the viability. I'm assuming it's something that they could swing and it would be worth it for them. And I don't think they're going to show up at GenCon this year and not do it next year because they'll have more capacity to make it better and bigger. Now, I don't know, like I always wonder, I know people consider it part of the ecosystem now, but the people that speculate on games and buy it as though it's some sort of stock that they're going to, or like this asset that they're going to tuck aside, that has to have some sort of detrimental effect when you're taking a chunk of product that's supposed to be played with, open, shared among collectors, and setting it aside and siphoning it away. It never gets open. You're just waiting for that dollar amount to tick to a certain point and then sell it to people that can afford it, which become much narrower, right? I don't have any sense of like how badly that affects the game. But if like people are glomming up beta because they're just trying to flip it, ironically, I think they'll hurt the game and maybe strangle it to death and hurt their own investment.
Yeah, fair.
Like I always said, a lot of alpha's got to get open, or this game is not gonna. It needs at least a core and like a little nugget of players that are hardcore that'll hold on. be there for beta, be there for AL, promote the game among their locals. So I don't know. I don't know how that will affect beta. I don't know, like, if they're factoring that into their print run size, right? Like if they have estimates based on what's been open, right? Because I think the dust code was really clever, because now they can at least check what's been submitted. So if there's like, oh, X amount of people are just sitting on product, we know the tendency is to behave this way. I don't know what kind of information they have or don't. I mean, it's probably very hard to guess.
Yeah, I mean, an alpha, it's a little soon for that, I think. But like, I had
Rudy
I did an interview with
a huge thing.
Yeah, I did an interview with Zach Bunn, from Team Covenant, and he had a really good point about beta. Like, I think we were talking about beta at the time. He had a great idea that they should print the hell out of the pre-cons for beta, like an insane amount, just to make it like unlimited, cheap as hell, like easily accessible by whoever the hell wants it. Still, you still got to appeal to the collector market and the investor speculator market, because that drives money, into the game and stuff.
Yeah, boosters is the lotto ticket, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, for the pre-cons, that's exactly right. Right, like I think that's a great
hopefully
idea.
they're thinking that for pre-cons.
Yeah,
and they're pretty reasonably priced from distributors. So
the pre-con for $40, you get 4 decks and a booster pack. That's unbelievable value, and it will be such that I am guessing, I don't know what's in it, but I am guessing that if you buy 2 pre-cons, like say you don't have any alpha, you're not going to spend any money on booster packs, right? And you just bought 2 pre-cons for $80. And you say you have a buddy, right? Like that only wants to make 2 elements. You could probably trade 2 of those or 4 of those and just focus on 2 elements and make all kinds of deck combinations out of that.
Yeah.
With 4 ofs of everything, right? Or max, like I don't know what the permutations are because I don't know what's in the deck. But yes, I think that's a great idea. I mean, those guys know games, right? Like they've played everything from the mid 90s to now,
and the business of it too. They know both sides, so yeah, they're pretty well informed and have some good ideas. So I think that's probably. But like Erik is a collector at heart as well, just as much as he is a gamer, if not more. So I do think there's going to be like a curio concept and other collectible aspects that make it imported and desired and stuff. So again, like I don't, and with the lack of a mainstream awareness and still like a fairly smallish number of LGSs aware and like willing to buy, I think beta's still going to feel small until it needs more time to marinate, and it'll be the next leg of awareness. But I do think we're still like 6 to 12 months until we get major traction and major growth in the market. And not just when I say market, I mean player market too.
Yeah,
No,
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think when I was thinking about beta, I was like, who is this really for? Excuse me. It feels like it's for the people that were sad they missed alpha.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I know, like, a lot of people told their friends. A lot of people told their friends, and their friends didn't listen, and then said, "Hey, you didn't tell me." And I was like, "Hey, yeah." but beta is their window to go buy, a few boosters or a case, get the pre-cons, get the play mats, get established in the game, have access to everything their friend does, right? So you don't feel left out. You get all the power of alpha, and you get to onboard that many players, and hopefully you at least double your players, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe more. And I'll tell you, like, just playing at GenCon, I have friends that go to GenCon. We all travel together. We hang out. We go out at night. They saw the game. They tried it out. Now I know a bunch of them are buying product, waiting for beta. Like, the queue is growing, right? Because to see the game and to play the game is to want to buy into the game, I think. Because it's just great. It's a really fun game.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I think certainly like very few people are playing with alpha right now just because it got so expensive right away. And like the people that bought it in a Kickstarter are going to get a lot of speculators. But beta will change that. There'll definitely be a significant leg of growth of players. And even those alpha people that thought they wanted to play and couldn't buy more cards to do so or have enough durability beyond their pre-con decks will take that next step and actually commit to playing. So that'll be big in and of itself. And then
here's the one thing I'll say about sealed product. If you're sitting on like a case or something, if you think the case is going to make or break your retirement or something like that, just think about it. First of all, the odds are extremely long that it's going to go crazy like Alpha Magic. Second of all, if it does go that crazy and you opened half of it and you had some fun with it along the way, your cards are still going to be worth a ton and you're still going to have a few sealed boxes. So what do you like? I don't get the psychology of it. I can't like, it's like, you know, it's like flagellants, right? Like they just stare at the sealed product and whip themselves and they're like, I will not open it. I will not have fun. It's like you're missing out on months. You're missing out on getting to play. Like, do you know how much I would have killed to play Magic at the beginning? Like be there at the very beginning and talk about it and be like, yeah, I remember that. That was crazy. Like this guy played 4 Black Lotuses. Or this guy was ripping up his Chaos Orb in front of me. You know, like that stuff is great.
Speaking of which,
experiences.
Did anyone play with Erik Curiosa?
I didn't see one. I didn't.
You didn't see one copy.
I didn't.
Is it like a highly meta relevant card? That you? Well, it could be, right? I mean, it's a powerhouse. But like, does it make sense to even put in your deck? It's unique, right? So it's not really like a big swinger.
So the thinking, if you're thinking from a purely gameplay perspective, unless you're going to use it every game, it's you don't want a dead card in your deck,
right?
So the way that you would get around that is if there was a sideboard, right? Like you could throw one in there as a sideboard and be like, okay, this is the finals. I want access to this power. I have one in my sideboard.
Okay.
There was no sideboard because it was best of one, right? Like, so there's no substituting cards in. So that already eliminates the most likely scenario you're going to use it. So otherwise you're going to have to play every round with it. And are you going to play every round with a dead card, or are you going to replace it every time you see it? You're going to use it, cast it, go get a card and rip it in half or whatever you got to do. So that's the choice. So I wasn't going to field it because I was like, there's another card that's just good and I will use every game. It was honestly, I didn't even think about using it.
Yeah.
Because I also didn't think winning was likely, right? I knew who was coming. I know like Haynes there also. He's another great player. Fortunately, Adam and him played the round before I played Adam. So I was like looking out for like good players to just get eliminated.
Open the skibble.
But yeah, I was not going to play that card because the odds of me, first of all, I don't have enough for every round, and I wasn't going to rip it up because I'm not going to throw money away. If it was the game 5 and I drew it, no hesitation to win that painting easily. I would do it.
Yeah, it looks amazing as I expected.
Well,
I've seen a lot of her paintings, you know, but I haven't seen any of the mixes in person. Yeah, but I will when I come to your house and learn the game.
Well, so the only way I'm letting you in is if you're going to learn to play.
That's the only.
That's contingent now. I'm now holding the mix hostage. Collector Arthouse must learn the game that he talks about all the time. Talk a little less and learn the game. There will be a huge gap of time.
I got a kid problem.
We'll call it the silence gap, and you can fill it with learning.
Yeah. What are you doing, man? He's playing with the cigar boxes that Tony Sudless sent me with his artist proof.
It is 10:40 p.m.
Yeah, probably
I'm on beer number 2, and your child is biting your ankles or something.
Yeah, man. All right, well, we'll do it again sometime. Appreciate you coming on. Short notice here. It's fun.
My pleasure.
Congrats on the win, dude. That's amazing.
I am thrilled, and I thank you very much. I was very lucky. Bye, young man.
All right. Take care, bro.
You don't have to go to bed for another hour, buddy. Don't worry about it. Daddy's a mush.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Take it easy.
Take it
easy.
See ya.